Hello everyone, this is Jacob from Guadalupe Custom Strings. This is the second episode in our series, informational series on our products. Today we're focusing on the jarana. We'll talk a little bit about the history, the tuning, and especially how to put on strings and choose the right ones for your instrument. We hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Elaine. So here we've got a jarana. They come in a variety of sizes. This is a kind of a small or medium sized one. I guess this is a primera, right? Sometimes a primera might be smaller. Sometimes, really every luthier nowadays kind of has their own idea and their own definition of exactly where a primera or a segunda begins or ends. And then the terceras are larger than that. And sometimes there's in between sizes. So because of that, it's nice that we have this variation of instruments, but as Elaine knows, and Elaine works here with us, it can become a little bit problematic when we're trying to what we don't want to do is standardize the set. We want to allow for the variation and people's ideas of how they're going to tune and how they're going to set it up. So this is a primera. For me, I would say it's a little bigger than usual primeras, it's almost, I would say, maybe a segunda. So we're gonna try to figure out a set today. First thing you're gonna do when you have your strings is you are gonna buy your jarana with your strings on it, and maybe start taking classes somewhere. And then when the strings are old, you're gonna start thinking about, I gotta change my strings. And by then you lost contact with the luthier that you bought it from, and so you don't know what to put on your, and maybe you don't live in Los Angeles, or you can't contact me personally, and you don't really know what to get. If you were ordering this, like we have on our website, the multi-pack, and that's a really good idea if you're in a situation like that, because you can order the multi-pack. I think it's $25 or $30, but you get plenty of strings, and you can tell me more or less the size of your instrument, or if you think it's a segunda or a primera or whatever they told you, and it'll come with enough strings for you to play around with it, like we're gonna do today, which I always recommend doing, because the jaranas are really so varied that there's no way to make a generic set. We do our best with the sets that we have on our website. But it's best if we know the most that we can about your instrument, and it's even better if you just get the multi-pack, or there's bigger options that you can get, and that way you'll have the ability to kind of play with and check things out and see what works for your instrument and your climate and the way that you play. And that's exactly what we're going to do today with Elaine's jarana. So today we're using Elaine's jarana. Elaine is been working with us the past year and a half maybe, and this is her jarana. What do you notice about, or do you like how the jarana's set up to start with? Do you like how it's set up? So that's the first thing. Sometimes you're gonna get a jarana and it feels really uncomfortable. Something's too tight, it has a horrible sound. You probably don't want to use those strings. Probably they're the wrong gauges for your jarana. So if you like what you have, then that's great, because you can start there and kind of just duplicate what you have. I was kind of messing around with it a few minutes ago. I think there's one string that's a little loose when you compare it to the others. And that one sounds a little not as bright, so I would go a little thicker with that string. But other than that, I think you're right. You like how it feels and sounds. I like how it feels and sounds. We're gonna try a little bit thicker on this string, but otherwise we're just gonna copy what you have. It looks like you've got a 25 here, so we'll start with a 25. Go one by one this time, since we're pretty much copying what we have. And you're just gonna start with your G string. Normally I start from the top, but it really doesn't matter. And these jaranas, you gotta play with them sometimes. I don't know what get the string out.
How frequently would you recommend changing the strings?
You know, some people just play in workshops, you know, once a week or whatever. And they don't need to change their strings but once or twice, once a year maybe. And some people obviously play on stage and they're playing all the time, or they're just, you know, studying a lot and they're playing it. And you'll see in the strings that they start to get kind of beat up along where the frets are. And so you'll see little parts where it gets thinner, and then you know that it's time. You'll notice that the sound gets kind of dull. These strings actually are not too old, they're not too bad. There's just a couple that I'm not happy with, but we're gonna change them all today. All right. Okay, so the jaranas, most of them have this kind of setup here where they just drill a hole through the bridge. You're gonna take the hole through the bridge. Sometimes with the very thin strings, you'll put it in, you'll tie a knot, and because the string is so thin, it'll get wedged in the hole here, and then you have to stick a pin through or get it out. So the purpose of these paper little things that people use, and I understand the reason, is so that you can get it out when it gets stuck when it gets wedged in the hole. So we have another solution for that. And we're gonna start selling our sets with these from now on. Now that we're recommending it. But we have another solution, and our sets are gonna be coming now with these little ball end pins. You can see my marimba player fingers. So our strings are now coming with these ball ends, and you're just gonna do a basic twice around, and that's gonna wedge it in. And you really only need to do this for, I would say, gauges 25 and below. 25, 22, 20. You probably want to use something like this. If you have an old set of ours, they didn't come this way before, but now they're all going to be coming with these ball ends so that we can fix this problem for people. So now we got our string in the ball end and through the tapa, and we're just gonna pull it up. So now we'll pull it up through the tapa, and that's gonna lock in place. And you can feel that's not going anywhere. So in the case of nylon strings, they're gonna stretch quite a bit. So you wanna really pull them all the way to the end once you're starting. You want to keep the string against the head of the instrument. So otherwise, if it starts going up, it's going to keep coming off of the peg. So you're going to push it down with your thumb close to the peg, and then you're going to turn it around and make sure that as it's winding, the material is going down. It's not going up, because otherwise it's going to just keep slipping off. So this is a G. We're going to take it up to G. But if you'll notice, it's going to continue to stretch. And so what you're going to want to do is, without pulling up against the tapa, you don't want to do that. But you do want to kind of pull the string against itself and stretch it out that way. Otherwise, it's going to happen while you're playing. And then you'll be tuning for 2 weeks. And this way you'll be pretty much in tune after 10 minutes.
So what are some of the reasons why the string might break?
It's very unlikely that a nylon string is going to break. A wound string, because it's a composite string, it's possible that sometimes the string could break and it's not the fault of the player. But for nylon, it's probably that they have the wrong strings on, or they didn't put them on right. And I mean, this is really, if you have this material at the tension that it's breaking somehow, it's because it was already too tight, you know. And if it breaks while you're putting it on, something's wrong. Something's up with either your bridge or your nut. It's something sharp, maybe cut it or damage it. It's something like that, because it's really not likely that this material is just going to break on its own. Okay, so our G string is in place. It's in tune. We like the tension. It's a 25 gauge, and we know that. So now we're going to go up a fourth to C. So it's important to think logically in your head. You're going to go up in pitch, you're going to go with a thinner string. From a 25, the next option we have is a 22, so we'll go there first. Okay, so we ran into a problem, a common problem that we have with a lot of these thin strings, which is it gets stuck sometimes in these holes because it's so thin. You make a knot and it gets wedged in the hole. So at home, you probably need to find a needle or something. We happen to be in a string shop, so we're just gonna get a piece of nylon. We'll stick it through and we'll get the string out. So at home, you're probably gonna need to find a needle or something that you can fit in there, a piece of wire, and that should be enough to knock it through. So the 22 feels nice. If it were a little too much tension, I'd go down to a 20, but that's the logic of this. You gotta kind of play with your instrument and see what works for you. So we're gonna stay, I think, with a 22. 22 is good. Got another 22 here. Once again, through the tapa. Once again, we're going to get our ball end. We're going to go around once. We're going to go around twice. And then we're just going to push it through like that. Do this once again. So you're going to put it through the second. Now the nylon stretches a lot, so you're going to pull it pretty much all the way. You're going to use your thumb to hold down on the string. So instead of, as you roll it around, instead of it rolling up towards the end where it's going to pop out, it goes towards the bottom and it locks itself in place. Once it sets in place, you can cut it or make your little loopy loops that people like to do. I just cut them. So we did our G using 25s. We went up to 22 gauge for our C's, and now we're gonna go down to a low E. So if you're going from your G to an E, then you're going down a third, right? You're going E, F, G, so you're gonna go to your third. We were at a 25 for the G, so maybe we'll try a 28 for the E. So with these strings, there we go. So this time we're using a 28 gauge, and we don't need to use a piece of paper or a little ball end. We can just do it by itself. We'll go the same knot, actually. Go once around, and then once underneath, and then twice underneath, and then you're just gonna pull it together, and you'll have a nice little knot like that, and that's not moving anywhere. Once again, we're gonna go through the tuning peg. Alright, so we used a 28 for our low E, that worked fine. We're going to use the same 28 for our next E, and go through the same process again. So same once, and around again. Halfway through here now. Boom. So we're using a 22 again for this high A. So we're gonna go back to using a ball end, or you can use a piece of paper like they do. If you can find a ball end, it's probably better. So we're gonna use a ball end this time. It's a 22 gauge. 2. Here. Go. I'm going to use a 36 now for the high A. Two. 1, 2, and that. So we're on our last string. We're back to our G. It's the same type of G as this, the same range G. We use pretty much the same gauges. We just went checking them one by one, and that's the process really with your string. Find the tension that works for you. We found out right away that our 25 worked fine for a G, and then we were going up to a C. So we went up in pitch, so we went to a higher gauge to a 22. And then we went to an E, but it's an E lower than the G. So we went instead from it's only a third down, so we went from a 25 to a 28 to E. And then we went to an A, and we used an octave for our A. So we went a 22 for the A, and we used a 36 for the low A. And then we had our G, and we went back to a 25. And that's gonna work out beautifully. We'll have the finished product in just a couple more minutes. All right, our last string. Last time through. Hey. So we're gonna give the strings a good stretch, otherwise they'll be stretching for 2 weeks while you're playing. So we avoid that. We're gonna stretch them out now. We want to give them a little tug. We don't want to pull on the tapa because we're not trying to put all kinds of stress on the tapa, but we do want to kind of stretch it out. So I'll run from the base of the bridge all the way up, all the way even up to the tuning peg, without putting a whole lot of stress on the tapa. Remember, you're just kind of pulling it against itself, and you'll hear this. The string will drop about a fourth in pitch or a fifth sometimes. So that's how much it would be going down in tune little by little while you were trying to play. So we're gonna do our final tuning here, and now we brought out the tuner to make sure we're actually tuned, not just in our heads. So using the same logic we've been using this whole time, we have an octave A, so we went up to a 22 to our A, and we went down to a 36 for our low A. Don't make the mistake of just getting any string and trying to tighten it all the way up to get a high octaves. All the time I see jaranas, like people use the same gauge for an A or an E, and they think that they can put one all the way up to a high A and tune one all the way down to a low A, and they wonder why their jarana sounds bad and why the strings are too tight. It's because they have the wrong gauge. So this logic that we're using here, it applies for all types of jaranas. If your jarana's hurting your fingers, if it doesn't sound right, then something's wrong. We can fix it. It has to do with the gauges that you're using. So I hope this video helps you to understand a little bit of the logic. Again, it takes lots of time. You have to spend time with your instrument, spend time playing your instrument. If it doesn't feel right, if something doesn't feel right, change it. See what works. And that's what we're here for. We hope you enjoyed the video. Elaine, we got your jarana finished. Your primera, it was a little different than our standard set, which is a good reason to know about some of the products that we have.
So in order, if you want to get a variety of gauges, when you order on the website, we have what's called a multi-pack that you can share with your friends, or if you play with a collective.
Different gauges.
And you could try out different gauges and see what works best and gets the best sound for your instruments.
So we hope that this video was helpful to you. Thanks for tuning in and thanks for sharing. And we'll see you next time.